Yeah, Labrat 72 is calling in. Although Labrat 72, I think, has escaped the lab, actually. To a certain degree. You've escaped the lab more than most people, I think. And
I'm trying.
And we exchanged a few emails a while back, and you had some really interesting experience and insights. It was kind of shocking in a way for me, or kind of moving, I guess you could say. And I've heard similar stories from different women over the years, but somehow this one, your emails really connected with me, and I thought, wow, this is something we don't, as a guy, we don't know about this kind of stuff. We don't think about it. And you're kind of impacted in a different way, I think, than the men are by certain deceptions going on in the world. And so I wanted to, let you share your experience and your insights and your view on things that, otherwise we wouldn't really know about. And I think there's a lot of women out there who have similar experiences that would benefit from, and also the men would benefit from hearing this perspective on things. So.
Well, growing up, I was a teenager in the 80s, and back then, back in the day, we had a culture of beauty and tone, muscle, athletic looking. That was beautiful. That was what women were supposed to aspire to be, just athletic beauty people. And I tried. My goal was, and I thought it was a very realistic goal, my goal was to be a model. And I actually was able to sign on with an agency, and I thought I had, I was halfway there, halfway to my dream. And it turns out that the agency sent me on local calls, go-sees, and the work was not exactly the heights that I had hoped to get to, at least not quickly. And what they did send me on one time, I got to be an assistant to a dresser for Fashion Week, which is a big, big deal. I got to dress the models, assist in dressing them. And when these people, women I thought they were, came off the stage, I had a huge awakening. My dream died immediately. Something that I had planned for years and years, it was instantaneously dead when I saw the size of these people. It didn't even, I hate to admit it, I didn't realize that they were men. It didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
I just noticed that I was nothing like them. I was tiny compared to them. And the modeling gig, the whole thing, you had to be a specific height, and very few women would even be that tall and that thin. It was something like 34, 24, 34, and 5'8" to 6 feet tall. And anyway, my dreams kind of ended when I saw these people coming backstage. They were huge. I was very tiny, microscopic. Nobody would look at me compared to them. And the first thing I noticed was their back. Their back was straight across, and I just thought, I'll never look like that. And it was years later that I discovered what was really going on. But these people they hate women. They hate us. And it was very clear starting even back then, back in the 80s and 90s, they would advocate for things like breast removal. They would tell the audience that they've had breast cancer and therefore everyone needs to prophylactically remove their breasts, or they've had an ovarian cancer or a uterine cancer and therefore hysterectomy, have a hysterectomy. They advocate for things that destroy femininity and women, and anything that is nurturing, they hate it. They hate it. They advocate for abortion. They call it, it's your body, your right, unless it's, a jab. But they do their very best to demean women, demoralize women, and turn us into something that we never were created to be. They want women to be harsh. I remember in the 80s, it was, you need to go to college and kind of push the men away and bring them down and insult them if they have the audacity to even ask you on a date. You're supposed to let them know that you're tough and you're aggressive and you can do their job without them. And they destroyed the family. They destroyed the family. They destroyed the relationships of men and women. They made women go, and try to be what they could never and should never be. They told them they have to look a specific way. Many women in college, even in high school, back in the day, they had developed eating disorders. They would intentionally have a very, an eating regime that was no person could survive. I personally, I was very athletic and still am, but back then I used to run extra, and Nautilus just came into being, and I would go and I would work out because I was afraid as I got older, I would turn out looking, hideous or something. So I pushed myself, and other women did as well. And what that did to us, it made it, a lot of women had such difficulty and they lost such weight that their menses stopped. Yeah. That's a way to ensure there's no birth. Yeah. There's no family. That's a huge thing, no babies and turning against men and stopping relationships. The mental and physical toll that took on the women back then and ever since. In my experience, what they've done is more than just dress up and fool people. It was designed to completely destroy women, and by doing that, they destroy everything. That takes the entire society down when there's no woman, no caretaker, no love. These are very harsh people. These are not like women at all. These people are very harsh, very forceful, and men are not attractive. Maybe on paper, if they see a picture, if they see a face on a screen. In person, it's very, very different.
Well,
it's very different. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, let's go back to the, so you were modeling in the 80s, is that right? Or was that the 90s?
The 80s.
80s, and you said so you noticed how large, and can I ask, roughly how tall are you, if I may ask?
I am 5'8", 5'8.5".
Okay, well that seems like that should be tall enough to be a model, no? But these women, these models were even taller than that, right?
Oh my goodness, by a lot.
Wow.
It was like a teenage girl in a room full of 20-something-year-old men, athletic men. They were 6'2", 6'3", and that's a stark difference when you're...
They were that tall?
Oh, they were that tall. And it wasn't even the height that struck me so. It was when they came off the stage and immediately one person takes off whatever they're wearing and the next person is putting something else on them. The broad back.
The broad shoulders. The broad shoulders kind of thing.
The broad shoulders and the length of the arms. I thought, oh my gosh, if this is what it takes to get that contract, I'll never get it. I can't even compete with that.
And you just thought these were like women who just like special super women or something, or women from a different part of the world that you've never seen before. At school,
that is exactly what I was...
They didn't have women like this at school or anywhere. You've never seen people like this before?
It's exactly what I was told. Well, they're from different countries, and that's how they got chosen to be models and supermodels, because they look so, phenomenal. And I just thought, they always told me I was very, very beautiful, and I'm compared to these, I'm, wow, invisible. So,
well,
my-
what is the official reason for why models need to be tall? We kind of know what the real reason is now, I think, but like, is there a rational explanation? Like, why do models need to be tall in the first place?
because in clothing design, apparently, when you're making the clothing, it has to be fit for, I don't know, when the seamstress is putting things together, you have to be a size 0 and you have to be quite tall, is what I always understood, because they wanted people of approximately the same size. You don't want one person towering above the other, because then the focus would be on the larger person.
But it doesn't really make sense
so-
if you think about it, because the female clothing is designed for real females who are not that large in the first place. I guess they just want a big visual. I mean, we know why they need to be tall now, because they're all men, right? That's the real reason.
Well, and also, I mean, there are two different categories. I mean, if you're doing print work, you could be smaller, or so they said.
Okay.
And then if you're doing runway, they want, this spectacle, this tall.
The runway, yeah. And who's kind of like, I've never really been to these kind of events, or I don't understand the modeling world. So these were like models what were these large models modeling? Were they were modeling clothing, and who was in the audience, and what was it for?
Well, it was for a fashion house. It wasn't the couture lines or anything. It was for a fashion house, and what they do, they have buyers, in the audience, and they have invitees, the special people, of the industry and such that come and take notes and take pictures and put it in the news and that type of thing. And I mean, back in that day, the icons were people like Cindy Crawford and Paulina Borisova, Elle Macpherson, and you never would have thought. I mean, women watched, they looked.
Yeah.
Yes,
they were all in sports. They were all in the magazines as well, and I want to talk about that a little bit, because before the internet, it was magazines, and magazines were very influential. People these days don't think of them as being influential, but they still kind of exist, and they exist online as well. But back then, the magazines was our main form of kind of entertainment, mass media type of stuff, to look at photos, and especially they put all these exotic-looking women. Sports, even the sports mag. I grew up with my father and brother. There was no women in my house, so we had sports magazines. But even the Sports Illustrated had all these same exact models you just mentioned. These Amazonian supermodel, the supermodels, right? And so I was exposed to these supermodels. But then in the women's magazines like Cosmopolitan or Women's Fitness, whatever, they had the same kind of people. So what impact did that have on women, do you think? These magazines.
Well, I mean,
with the supermodels.
As you said, the supermodels. Well, I mean, that was in the 80s the thing. The magazines, if you didn't have the subscription to every magazine, something was lacking. I mean, that is what we did. We had Vogue was the hottest magazine, and Marie Claire, and when you look at these people, especially on the cover of Vogue back then, that was the makeup style. That was what you were supposed to wear. That was, girls would even imitate the poses sometimes that the people in the magazines were doing. And it was just, what we did. We didn't have the internet or any of those things. And that was how we were told femininity was supposed to be. You're supposed to have this specific look. And it sounds silly now, but it was very important.
Well, you're like a teenage girl hanging out with her friends, and you look at these magazines, and you're kind of reaching that age. You're becoming a woman, and you're like, what does it mean to be a woman? What am I supposed to look like? What am I supposed to do? You get that information from these magazines. Is that
yes.
right?
Very much so. I mean, and the articles in them, I mean, were actually not meant to benefit women, but we thought they were. They told you how to eat, how to rest, how to rate your mate. I mean, it covered the entire spectrum, and we followed it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, me too. Like, as a guy, I read, like, guitar magazines or whatever. My brother read motorcycle magazines, and and so the girls were reading these kind of magazines and how to wear makeup, right? That kind of stuff, and how to, and then all the like I think it may be all, but at least most of the women in all those magazines are actually men in drag, right? They're the transvestites, right? So you're looking at these images of men essentially who have different bone structure and different muscle development, different body fat ratios, and they're giving you an ideal that's impossible for you to achieve, right? But you try to achieve that ideal.
Absolutely. They gave you a false ideal and told you that that is what men desired, and and you believed it because, you know, you're young, and but they give you a false perception. As far as men are concerned, I mean, you saw those magazines as well, and you thought, you know, any girl that didn't look similar to that, you wanted nothing probably to do with her. You would prefer that type of person.
Well, those kind of girls didn't exist at school. We didn't have girls. But yeah, like we talked about, these were the exotic women from a faraway place. And they had this kind of energy about them. I don't know the word exactly. You know what I mean? Like they exude a certain energy, and normal women don't have that strong presence. You know what I mean?
It's a sexual thing. They have an extremely strong, forceful, sexual,
like
in your face kind of presence,
which is a male trait, basically, right? Yeah.
Like a man, and a woman would never do that. She would never dress like that. She would never be forceful like that. It's just completely different. And I'm, in my experience, you know, in a room full of those people, you can feel it. I mean, it's palpable.
They have no shame. They're kind of like they have this body behavior. They're very I don't know where they show off, and they just have no sense of decency or anything like that. Whereas even like a really attractive woman would actually have some modesty, I think. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's right. Women have a little bit of decorum, and back in the day, they used to be a little bit, you know, kinder and gentler, and a gentle person would never, ever do that. And now it's been made, you know, commonplace. People don't think a thing about it. They think that's how women really are, but they're not. They never were. They've just been trained all these years. It's been forced upon them to be kind of aggressive, and it's just not normal.
And so in this modeling industry, who else would know that these are men and they're not real women? Like, who in the industry, like all the models would know what's going on. All these tall supermodels must have known that all the other ones were also similar to them. But then, like, there's people who dress them and do all this stuff, and makeup artists and the
makeup artists.
Like, who would know? Who would know what's really going on?
I assume absolutely the makeup artists know, the hairstylists know. The hair is different on a man than on a woman. Some women really do have thick and coarser hair. I mean, it depends on your nationality and all of that. But for the most part, women, U.S. women, I guess, the hair is finer. It's a different feel than a man's hair. The front of the hair, I mean, you can even see, I mean, widow's peak versus straight hairline. I mean, there are so many tells, and the makeup artists, they certainly know. I mean, a man, even a very, very emaciated, thin man, has a bigger face, a bigger bone structure, and the fat is distributed differently. The subcutaneous fat in a man's face is different than a woman. I mean, and muscle tone is different. They all know. They all know.
Might even smell different if they're that close to them, you know. And they might even notice like facial hair coming in or something sometimes.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a big secret. It's a joke on the sheeple.
So it's an industry-wide deception. Even a lot of these so-called female executives in that industry, especially, they're also men.
Absolutely.
There's that one Anna something. Wincor, I think the name, I don't know.
Oh, Wintour.
Yeah, that's an obvious one. Yeah, but
Yeah.
wow. And so the effect of this on women, teenage girls, and then you're in your teens, and then your 20s, and then women develop eating disorders, all kinds of psychological issues, right?
Well, back in the 80s, that was most certainly true. Now, I don't know what the impact is. Women have been brainwashed. Each decade it's a different type of brainwashing. So I think women, girls now get the updated version, a different version of what we.
Nowadays
they become men.
Yeah.
Get tattoos up and down your body and dress horribly, and I don't know, but back then that was the thing. You tried to look a very specific way that women just simply couldn't look because they're not men, and it was very important back then that it was money and looks, and think about it, I mean, that was Wall Street, and you wanted to be looking a specific way and getting a specific job and acing out the guy for the job. And they started in very heavily back in the 80s with the programming and destruction of the female. Yeah.
Yeah, the destruction of the female. I mean, I think this began a long time ago, but I wonder kind of in the last 100 years or so, if we think about when did this, I think it kind of became, it had a kind of a gradual, there was a huge eugenics and population control movement like 100 years ago, I believe, like when Planned Parenthood started, which was Bill Gates' father was part of that. And, but then like in the 50s, I think they still kind of had the female, image in the 50s, but as we know, a lot of those people were men as well, like Marilyn Monroe, and Jane Mansfield and all those kind of superstars from the 50s, and then you had the feminist movement kind of in the 60s and 70s, which was like you were talking about, destroying the relationship between men and women.
Yeah, they want no carbon emissions, they want no human, no animal, nothing breathing, and the way to do it maybe is to take down the female first. And maybe they tried with the pinups, the pinup girls, the Norma Jean Baker. Maybe they tried to get the men, and it just wasn't sufficient. So they want to get rid of the women. And
it seems kind of like they want to exterminate humanity.
Yes.
Would you agree with that? Or at least control humanity, control whatever the agenda really is. Ultimately, they need absolute control to achieve whatever agenda they have. And it does seem to be a sterilization, depopulation, and even a transformation of humanity, which they openly admit.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to have complete control and no dissent. Otherwise, it won't work, I guess. They're evil. I'm not sure what the goal is other than to get rid of us. But it does seem like they started in forcefully on the women just in my lifetime. I noticed a huge difference.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Now they're kind of. I think they're trying to sterilize. They sterilize the boys. Castration, that kind of stuff. Pushing the transgender, propaganda on children, on boys, especially, also on girls as well. But trying to emasculate the men.
Yeah. And when you're that age, you believe it. I mean, I think back in the late 70s, early 80s, I completely believed what they said, and just like kids do today, they believe it. That's what they're told, and why would you question it? Why would they lie? But I think they're going after the boys and the girls, the babies, the elders, everybody. The entire human race is, it's their target. And the purpose, I don't know, but it's been going on for a long time, and I know from seeing the things that I've seen that it's different when they're on a magazine or on a video or whatever is big now, I guess, videos. It's not as obvious, but when you see it up close, it's disturbing. It's just disturbing. It's not. You know, it just.
Well, you're a woman.
Don't even know what to think.
A real female. You're basically a real female seeing a kind of a. Well, they even call them female impersonators. Actually, that's kind of a. Maybe I should start using that word. It won't get censored, you know. And so, like, a man sees this, and for us, it's like they might even be attracted to them at first because they overdo the makeup and the, you know, all that feminine. They kind of overdo it, you know. And it gets our attention as men, but then the split second later you think, but this person's so large and so tall. This is weird, you know. So there's kind of an initial attraction, and then kind of you're kind of repulsed like a second later, you know, when you realize because there's an instinctive reaction, but then hopefully your mind kind of what kicks in and thinks about the situation. But what's the reaction of like when a woman comes across this? What's the process? What happens?
Well, when women encounter like another woman on the street, or that there's a gentle acknowledgement, a smile, you know, no aggressiveness, just you keep going, and there's no feeling at all, really, maybe just a calm. But when you encounter a man dressed as a woman, that feeling's not there. It's a different feeling. It's like, wait a minute.
Do you feel like they hate you? They hate you? Is that what
they look at you differently? There's I don't know, it's not hostility, but there's an underlying tone of I don't like you, and you can feel it.
Really?
That's the way I felt. There is an underlying tone of, you know, you shouldn't be here, or we're better than you. I don't know what goes on in your mind. But
you know how YouTube is full of these transgendered people talking about their transition, and they have like millions of views and subscribers, and they get awards and stuff. But I was watching one of those a few years ago, and the transgendered person was saying that they were better than real women, and just going on and on and on about it in a real kind of arrogant.
That's really the way it feels too. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why the hate. Why do you have to be so hateful? Why do you want to be what you're not? You know, why? You hate yourself that much that you have to become something completely different? I don't know. But you can tell. I mean, women are a gentle species, and they're nurturing, and men are just not. You're not designed that way. You're supposed to be the protector, and I'm sure everybody will hate that, but that's the truth.
No,
women
there's kind of an equality there, but there's differentiation. You know, there's different roles. Men and women have different roles and different. You know, we're different, but we're you know, equally valuable, and but we have different roles, I think, and that's just kind of natural. That's just the way it is, you know. And they're definitely trying to erase that. I mean, even the feminist movement, as a man, you know, the feminist movement was just kind of annoying to me, to be honest. And it just felt like the women like there was a lot of man-hating women out there, especially like in college. I mean, we were literally taught in college in the early 90s, like that men are evil, basically. There's this one book we read. It was about, hey, we have to put all the young men in their 20s in prison because they're all dangerous. And, you know, It's just like, wait a minute, I'm a young man in my 20s. Like, I don't want to go to prison just for being a man. Like, it was like there's these ideas out there. It's just illegal to be a man. You know, that's kind of why they want to castrate men.
Equal opportunity hatred, I guess. But we were taught as women, I mean, not maybe blatantly, but there was an undercurrent, most certainly, of demoralize the men. If they, you know, are kind to you, let them know that they're harassing you, and go to college and outdo them. And there was very much that environment, and men changed. I mean, from the 70s to the late 80s, men did change, and they had to. I mean, it was survival. You had to protect yourself against the harsh women. Brought on by the feminist movement led by men.
What about sports? Did you ever encounter the imitation women in the sports that you're aware of?
Not me personally, but absolutely. I mean, I believe that, in my theory and my estimation, if you hear them in the news, if you see their face, they're not a woman. They are not a woman. No female. You'll never see or hear from a female. And that is just me, my opinion. Yeah, exactly.
Now, when did you start to realize that you had been fooled? Like, and what was that process like for you as a woman?
Later on in college, I began to put it together,
really?
And I could see, absolutely. I could see then because, I took anatomy and those type of scientific, and I thought, well, now wait a minute. I started discovering the things that you're talking about now, the small pelvis, and women have much longer legs. That's why men have to wear high heels to give them a little extra length on the legs because their torso is quite different. I mean, a woman has a short torso, a male has a longer torso, and when I started noticing those things, and certain events came about as well, but one day it clicked. I thought, now, okay, they weren't even female, and sure enough, I looked, and then years later, it was clear, and I thought, I think I got
in the 90s, probably, right? Would that be in the 90s? You realized that these models you had seen, and does this include like women in the mass media? You realize that they're all men.
And also I thought about for a very short time being a news anchor, and I got into, get interviewed, and at the desk when I was doing the interview, I noticed that the people around me looked quite different, and that too was kind of a tell. I thought, now, wait a minute. And this was, again, the early to mid-90s, and I thought, something is wrong, and something is just completely wrong.
Wow.
But by then it had clicked, and I didn't think it was as widespread as it was. I didn't know that until your videos. Okay. And then it kind of, but now I fully believe you don't hear about women at all. I don't think you do. They're all, if you hear them, see them, know them, there's a reason why they want you to be observing the same kind of person straight across the board, and that's not a woman.
They want us to see the image of these fake women. They don't want us to see real women.
That's right.
They want us to see the fake women, so we get conditioned. And I think that's one reason a lot of people, like even just a week ago or so, I was trying to tell my friend about this. And, of course, he just thought I was crazy, or he thought I had some kind of weird obsession with this thing or something. And they just can't see it because all of them look the same, and they think all of them are women. So they think women look different than they don't even know what real women look like anymore. I mean, that's
the truth. I mean, unless you sit and study it, they give you quick glimpses. Like in the movies, they're very, very careful, and I don't watch movies anymore. Decades, but what they do, they kind of shield the lumbar spine. They make sure that there's a brief glimpse, so you can't see that a woman's curvature is not there, or they get a body double maybe. But they're very cautious. Cover up the side that doesn't have an indent. Women have an indent. Doesn't matter your size. We all have hips, and there's an indentation above the hips, both sides. Not just standing cockeyed, and they want one fluid visual, and that's not a female. They would never want that to be. It would look as obvious as me standing behind that stage and looking at those men. It's obvious.
But I do notice in like movies or something, it's all in the editing and the camera angles, and so. Like there'll be some movement, and then just when you're about to get a good shot of the hips and shoulders, they will do an edit and kind of cut that part out and give you a different camera angle. So the people making these movies are very aware of what's going on as well. The editors and the directors. I mean, everyone in the entertainment industry must also know what's going on. the same as in the modeling industry.
I would have, well, certainly. I mean, they know when to cut the shot and when to have, the lights dim, or when the person needs to turn at a specific angle so you don't get that wide shot of that flat back. That's where the term broad came from. She's not a woman, she's a broad. That's telling you that it's not a female. The broad back. I mean, that for me was the biggest tell, and it truly is. And I don't know that they really would show that. I don't know. I don't watch movies now, but I don't know that they would ever give you a straight-on shot of one of their backs.
Yeah, they do their best to conceal it, and they'll put their hands in the pockets. And I noticed that a lot of the male actors will put their hands in their pockets a lot. And I wonder too, are they trying to cover something up as well? The ones we think are males, which may or may not be, inverted as well. Would you have any opinions on that? Like because I think when a woman looks at a man, there's a there's a very different dynamic happening, I would imagine, than when a man looks at a man, and you might be able to notice certain things if there's anything kind of off with the men. If the men are inverted as well. What do you think about that?
Honestly, I mean, I would think it would be kind of an equal opportunity thing. If one does it, the other would have to do it. But honestly, to tell, I don't know how you would tell other than facial hair, short arms, that type of thing.
It's tough. I was at a coffee shop the other day, and there was this guy sitting next to me, and he really looked like an FTM. And then I heard him talk. He had like this weird voice, and he looked a lot like, he was kind of pudgy, fat, whatever you want to say. And he looked like a classic FTM, but I wasn't really 100% sure either, even sitting right next to somebody. But it had all the characteristics. So I think it is hard. Is that just kind of a pudgy dude who doesn't exercise at all, or like a total total failure as a man? Sorry to be harsh, but or is it just a fat lazy dude, or is it like a FTM? It's like how to be sure. It's hard to be 100% sure, but it's something.
I think
off.
Maybe exactly. I don't know. Part of it might be, when did they start taking the drugs? If you give
the testosterone,
a young, exactly, if you do the injectable testosterone when you're younger, I mean, that would certainly have an impact on your bone length, and whether or not your hormones would not be, you wouldn't be producing the hair, you wouldn't be, your skin probably wouldn't be as rough as a male should be.
Because it's the hormones that the men have it naturally, in the testes, right? That's testosterone that the men naturally have, and then you just inject it into a woman, and then they get very similar. They actually go through male puberty.
Well, I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe, maybe that's it. Maybe if you start doing the injections, you turn out to be 6 feet tall and just weirdly not quite male, and
the steroids.
Definitely not female.
Yeah, and that's all kind of pharmakia kind of stuff, right? They do a lot of steroids, even like for men, right? For men, like you're talking about being a teenage girl, and the ideal females were kind of these fake females. For men, the ideal male was like a strong, muscular man, and those guys are all doping. Like, even if they're biological males, anyone in the weightlifting industry and all this stuff, bodybuilding, they're all doping. They're all just injecting. And you hear insiders once in a while will confess this kind of stuff. They're all just injecting steroids, and all these actors, some of them get muscle implants even. So they could be female to male, and they're just doping and doing all the steroids and just getting all bulked up.
You did a video not that long ago, and there was a female to male, and looking at that person, that is repulsive. I mean, I don't even know. It's repulsive. It's horrible. Why would you ever do that to your body? But also, sadly, I'll admit, I wouldn't have known. If you wouldn't have said, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
I would have thought.
Like you said, you don't think about it. You don't think about it. They're pretty good. Whereas the male to females, they still have the huge bone structure, and that's what gives it away.
Well, the ones that I saw, in that specific industry at that specific time, there it should have been. But like I say, I didn't get it until years later. I just thought I wasn't quite good enough by any means. But
wow, I mean, it's like we live in this sick culture. The culture itself is trying to destroy us. You know, if they just hate humanity so much, it kind of makes sense to target the women, because women are giving birth to more humans, right? And they want to sterilize us, and the men can be converted into the fake women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and that would, of course, stop reproduction as well. But I don't know biblically. I mean, wasn't there something? I believe there is something in the Bible about that. I mean, the eunuchs. I don't know how it all goes, but they were kind of revered, were they not?
Oh yeah, yeah. Even the transvestites, yeah, and the eunuchs were in the positions of power in government, you know, and because back then, because it was all they all had their gods and goddesses, and that was all part of the government and part of society. It wasn't like a separate religion over there and then the rest of society over here. It was all integrated, and they all had all these gods and goddesses. And the transvestites were basically, they sacrificed their manhood to be married to the goddess, and then the goddess would channel through them. They basically get possessed by a demon, essentially. At least, they believed they would become at one. They were married to the goddess, and the goddess is like a fallen angel or something, and so they dedicate them. They have no other woman in their life. Right, they're not going to get married and have children. They belong to the goddess, and they're an androgyne. The androgynes were like shaman, priests, prophets, and even kind of demigods. They were like different. They weren't really human, They're like an alien race. But they thought, and that I think that's what's still going on. And this is a religion, and they're like putting this into law now. I was talking to a counselor the other day, like a psychologist counselor, who said he lives in the United States, where he cannot even have like teenage clients anymore at all, because if a teenager mentions anything about gender confusion, there's only one state-sponsored diagnosis that he can have. You have to transition the child if they even just say the word gender or something. Like you can't even question it, and that's a law. Like, it's illegal to stop a child from going down that path in certain states. I don't know if it's nationwide or not, but this is an actual counselor told me this. So he can't even have those kind of like younger people as clients anymore.
Everything is completely backwards. Look at what they've done. Look at what they've done. I mean, I don't know.
I think it's satanic. It's satanic, and they hate humans because we're created in the image of God, right? And there's some kind of jealousy or just hatred of us, and we have a really good future, actually. Like, the whole plan of humanity is not what they wanted. Like there's certain spiritual beings that don't like what God is doing with humanity, and they're trying as hard as they can to destroy us and to kind of get us to destroy ourselves as well, through the brainwashing and the propaganda.
If people know no other way, I mean, I'm not sure how they can actually make a good choice, because they're never taught what should be correct and what is tainted. All they see is what's fed to them on the television. They listen to their news. They don't know that there is another way.
And so the family unit is weakened, and so they're not getting proper, they're not being brought up, they're not being raised by their parents in a good, healthy way. So they're being raised by the mass media and the state. The state is really raising children, even if the child lives with their mother or father. There's really not much happening there. You know what I mean? They're not getting
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I could even speak for myself as well. I was raised by rock bands. Rock bands that's where I got my moral compass originally. And then I broke away from that.
But that happens to all of us, though. I mean, seriously, the school is whatever the school tells you, that's what you take home to your parents, and that's what's in your head. I mean, no matter what they tell you. I remember back in the was the late 70s, maybe early 80s again. It was the stop smoking, non-smoking, don't smoke around your children. So the kids took that notion home to their parents. You can't smoke around me. And I mean, whatever the school's pushing, that's what the child takes home. And then the parent, you have to kind of comply or the kid will just not stop. And you're afraid they're going to turn you in. So,
well, now a child goes home and says they're gender confused. And if the parents don't go along with it, they will, the parents are, it's illegal. It's illegal for parents to, to question that as well. Just like the counselors. Yeah.
Look at how far we've gone down the hole.
It's state-sponsored, anti-human extermination, and then they got the pharmakia. They're adding vaccines to the childhood vaccine schedules and all this kind of stuff, and digital currency. So, yeah, they're definitely going to make it very difficult to go against the agenda. But I think that's kind of the test.
I mean, people. Well, is it a test? I don't know really why. Why are we here? Is it to see how much we can endure? Is it to see? I mean, I'm not sure on that one. But yeah, the digital will have a huge effect. And if they link this whole jab thing back to a database, your job, no matter what you do, you think people who haven't been fired yet think that they may have escaped it, but wait until you have to rely on that card for your food and for your housing. And who's gonna stand up? People need to think right now and make that choice. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna refuse or are you gonna comply? Because this life is short, and you better make a good choice.
Most people will comply, I think. To be honest.
Most people. Yeah.
I was amazed at how many people knew the whole thing was a scam, the last few years, but they still complied, even with the jabs. Like they knew as much as I did.
Had friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they wanted to go to a wedding, had a cruise book.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah.
And if you sell your soul for so little,
Yeah.
I fear that the people, the remnant who remains, I mean, we're not going to remain long, but it's going to be very few of us who do. But I hope people make up their mind and they make a good choice when it comes right down to the wire, when it comes down to food, and say no, your soul's worth more than that. So
it'll be like a vice is tightening. It'll be difficult. They won't. At some point, they'll probably start to just flat out take people away and execute them. But at first, it begins with the pressure, to kind of test people, and people fail that test, or some people pass that test, and then at some point they'll probably just start killing people, and then that'll be the test. And that's a whole different class of people who are willing to die.
You set the tone in your mind. I mean, if you're willing to waver now, if you don't have your mind made up as to what's truly important, you can be swayed. And I think now is the perfect opportunity for people to just kind of solidify in their mind what's most valuable to them. Is it in this world? Is it of this world? Or is it beyond here? And for myself, anyway, that's after losing my employment, I made a choice.
So it's the same thing, right? Same for the jab. Is that right?
Yeah.
Did you notice your coworkers just kind of suddenly, did they change? Or did you, people who you thought were your friends, did they suddenly change? And what was your experience like with that?
No, what's wrong with you? Well, it's just a shot. What's wrong with you? Just take the shot. It's your career. You went to college. What are you going to do? That's just, stupid. And I said, no, that's not it at all. Not at all. And clearly, nothing would be forced that strongly, and certainly nothing would be free if it were good for you. It is not the way that life works. And
Yeah.
If it's good for you, you've got to work for it, and they're certainly not going to hand it out and forcefully hand it out. And I don't want to be a part of that. I have no, I'm not going to change who I am and what I feel for a few dollars. And that they're going to be worthless anyway. That's the sad joke on the people. You did this to get your job, to save your money, and to save your house. Well, they're going to take it away from you anyway. Your dollar's worthless. You're not going to have your 401k. You're going to be on the street.
Well, that's the thing. They might even lose their job a year later, because the company's downsizing, or you know what I mean? Like that job is, people think their jobs are forever. They're not.
And now not only do you not have any of that, you're sick because you took it. I mean, that's...
But obviously, like, to talk to these people about it, you can't, they don't even understand it at all. And it's just like, there's no real emergency. This is going to do more harm than good. That's basically like, maybe they could understand that, but not really. They don't believe it, But
no, but people don't comprehend that at all. That's so far.
It's so simple. It's just amazing. It's like such a simple idea. They should be able to comprehend it. So it almost seems like they're blinded. You know what I mean? Like
they are blinded. That's what I was going to say. They cannot see it. They cannot see it, and when you try to explain it, that makes it worse. Then they get defensive and tell you, like, oh my gosh, okay, never mind.
Because they think they're smart. Everyone thinks they're smart and well informed, and people who are kind of brainwashed, they don't know. They don't think they're brainwashed.
Well, it would be, they can't see it. They can't even fathom that it could be true. Why would they do that? It always comes back to that. Why would they do that? Yeah. Why would they do that?
Well, see, I don't know. Again, the big picture. Yeah, they don't understand the spiritual warfare, and they don't believe in that stuff because we were taught that we were taught evolution. We were taught the globe. We were taught that there is no God. Basically, that's what we were taught. Really. There is no God, and human. So that means human being. What is a human? If human beings were not created by God, then what are we? We're something. Then we're just creating ourselves. We are gods ourselves, and so we have to create fake women and fake men, and bioengineer humanity into the next stage of evolution. Right?
Exactly. I wonder, how long is it going to be before they take away the created? We're not a created being, therefore we have no rights. Creation, I don't know. It's a slippery slope, and they're taking so much away so quickly, and people stand back and assume that they have protections and rights, and I don't know. And there's no telling them otherwise. There's no thinking deeply about it. And it's just going to be a few people who question or remain silent and stand back, and we're going to be the ones that they come after first. And I don't know. The society has changed so dramatically that I just can't. Every day it's something new. What next? What are they going to do to us next?
Yeah.
And
well, they're definitely redefining humanity now, right? Because what is, like, the whole thing? What is a woman? Well, we don't know anymore. We don't know what a woman really is. We'll create a new type of woman. We'll create a new type of man, create a new type of human being. The androgynous humans, right? Which, they're kind of redefining. And that's they literally say that. The goal of the Great Reset is the transformation of humanity, which is not going to be better than, it's not going to be an improvement,
No. It's terrifying that people don't stand up. They honestly just, because they can't or they don't see it or whatever the case, they just will not stand up and fight against it. So I guess we're along for the ride, and for what purpose, I don't know. Maybe it is to see who will just say absolutely not. I'm not from here. I'm not of this place, whatever this is, this terrarium that we live in.
It is strange, isn't it? I think in many ways it's an opportunity for people like us, maybe, who, we can kind of look a little bit deeper, look beyond the surface, because the surface is all lies and deception, right? Look beyond the surface and try to figure out some of the answers to these questions, and maybe there is more to life than what we've been told, and maybe there is a truth out there that they try to conceal from us, and You know,
I think it's probably something very, I mean, maybe it is something as seemingly insignificant as they tell us it in song, you know, it's a small world after all. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's why we all live in a very tiny place and they don't want us to know anything outside of this teeny tiny terrarium. And maybe that's why the flights are skewed. You know, you have to fly clear up north to go somewhere down south. And maybe they don't want us to know the truth that we're all in a fairly small area and they've got the better half of the cage, you know?
Yeah, well, they don't want us to know that God created the world.
And yeah, exactly.
I mean, it kind of implies a creator, you know what I mean? Like if there wasn't a big bang and we're just these planets floating around, you know, and the galaxy's moving at like 1,000,000 miles a second and all this crazy stuff, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like the official story makes no sense, right? But most people don't know that, and most people choose to believe the lie. I think they prefer the lie. You know what I mean? It ultimately comes down to our heart. I think inside the human heart is the real root of the problem. I think that's where I'm heading. I'm kind of realizing that now. You know,
people have become, if they weren't already, people have become evil. I mean, for lack of a more descriptive term, people are evil. Look at what they do to one another, and look at. I mean, it's just not. It's not sociable. It's not a society. It's a free-for-all where you go after the person who slightly bumped your car. You know, you hire an attorney and go for blood. And people have become very easily set off. And
that's part of it too. I think they want us to kill each other. You know, they want us to become evil. That's a good point. Yeah. I think so.
That's why they do the stories all the time, pitting people against each other so you don't watch them.
We do all the dirty work for them. Yeah, like even the work thing, right? It was my coworkers that turned against me. It wasn't the police didn't come or the government or the Freemasons or Satan. It was my coworkers who became evil, treated me like a slave or a prisoner or a convict, a criminal. They treated me like a criminal after I gave them 10 good years of service at work. You know?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, and I think that's probably coming a lot more down the road. If you're the person who looks a little bit different than the rest or speaks a little bit different, I believe your neighbors are going to be the ones who turn you, and they're probably going to give incentives at some point too. You know, if you can.
Yeah, people are, you know, people will look out for themselves first, and
I don't know. This is a very scary terrarium.
This is cancel. Yeah. Well, it's temporary. The good news is it's temporary.
Yeah.
and I think for me, at least it makes me study the Bible more. You know, my faith is improved, I think. So in a way, with a guy like me, their plans are kind of backfiring. Like I'm getting stronger, actually, I think, in many ways. Not physically necessarily, but, you know, like spiritually, this has jump-started my, for lack of a better term, my spiritual growth. And it's something I'm really taking seriously now, you know. So I think that, you know, we have to react one way or another, you know. So that's the path I'm going down. You know, other people are getting injected or they're doing whatever. They're building a bunker. You know, some people are focused on survival, you know, and that's whatever. People kind of do what they're going to do, you know. And so I think there's an opportunity, even though it's a horrible situation we're in, but there is maybe a silver lining, you know. Ultimately, the big picture, you know. Even if we're killed, you know, I do believe the human spirit or the human soul or spirit, whatever it is, there's an it goes on, it lives on after death, I believe, more than
absolutely.
Yeah, I believe
absolutely.
I didn't know that before, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I can attest to that. I have had experiences in my life that prove that to me beyond a doubt. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So big picture, this life is just so short, and then eternity is forever, right? It's just the math, you know, do the math.
Well, I mean, that's exactly right. And at least, you know, it brought you to different realizations, and you're kind of, you know, seeing things now like you didn't see them growing up. And for me, I've just become very resolute, and now, what else can you possibly do to me? Do whatever you think you have to do, and more power to you, whatever.
Wow.
I've learned to care a little bit.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say to the women out there who may have suffered as a result of this toxic world we live in?
I would say just don't comply, but do it in a very kind of feminine way. Feminine is not a bad thing. You don't have to compete with men. You shouldn't. You should be proud that you're a female. You can give life. You can nurture. You can do all of the things that men can't do, and that's a very special gift. And you should be so honored that you were born female. And don't let these people tell you how to look or what clothes to buy or what label to have. You don't want their label on your clothing. You don't want to advocate for them. They're hostile towards us. Just be who you are. Don't go out and get your body marked with ink. I mean, just be a gentle soul and do your very best and be glad to be a female. Really, this life is short, like Mark said. It's very limited, and get through it the best you can. Be kind to others. Be kind to others, and go against the grain. You don't need to be hard like you've been taught the past 20, 30 years. You don't need to compete. Just be kind, gracious, and female. Yeah, wow. That's it.
Wow, very powerful message. That that what you just said right there has probably never been said before, especially in mass media. You know what I mean? Women have never heard that before, probably. Really? Where are they going to hear that?
It's the absolute truth. It's really, you should be more than grateful. Be honored to be a female. Look at how badly these creatures want to be us, and they can't. They never will. They're not even close. Mm. We're the real deal, and you need to be extremely grateful for that. Men, you don't have a female side. Don't let them fool you. You don't. You're not supposed to. You're a man. You're not supposed to have a feminine side. Yeah. Just be who you are. Be a man. Be polite towards women. Open a car door and shock somebody. Shock your wife. Open the door for her. You won't know what to do, but it'll be. Yeah. I mean, gentleness will. Love wins out. Kindness will win.
Yeah.
If not here, certainly later on. So.
Well, that's something I'm working on myself because, the last few years, it made me angry, really, a lot of what was happening.
They don't even understand it when you lash out at them. They just kind of, they don't get it anyway. So just
they think we're the
lower
crazy
the mask
people.
below your nose and walk on, and just walk past them. They don't understand. They never will. They weren't meant to. They're part of this world. They'll probably never know anything but this world, so let them have it.
Wow. Well, this has been really, really good conversation, and you have a really good message for people. And, sounds like you're doing great, really, even though, you lost your job, you living in this toxic world. There's a strength of character there that's kind of hard to find these days with people. So I appreciate you sharing.
Well, it was nice speaking with you, and I hope that people take the message for what it's worth. It's your life and your future, not only here, but forever on the other side. So just be gentle and know there's something better coming, and don't let them fool you, and don't let them lie to you. Just turn your head and keep walking.